what are your some of like go-to Bible passages or contexts that you kind of like hit on to say this is what the Bible says about this issue?
Ephesians, all of Ephesians. You just come on
Love it.
Ephesians. Colossians 3, 2 Corinthians 5, Genesis 1. We live in Genesis 1.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just because of, our creation identity. Doesn't matter, who you were, whether you are a believer or not. We all are created with the image of God. And if we are all created with the image of God, then, you're no better than me and I'm no better than you. We look in the Old Testament to define justice. Many people say that that the gospel, is a social justice narrative, or it's a social justice gospel, and things like that. Well, no, like the gospel is something very specific, and we define justice by going to the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
And so we use Leviticus and places in Deuteronomy to look at justice and how we treat one another. And so looking at Ruth and Boaz, in regards to just laws and how to participate with one another. So the
Yeah, in
goal
fact,
is really to
it,
use it all.
if you yeah, and you it kind of sounds like a whole theological package that you're bringing, and I mean it really is. I mean the Bible talks about all this, right? I mean the very beginning, man and woman were created in God's image. So there's like the whole concept of every human being is created in the image of God and has some sort of inherent respect that you should give them, no matter who they are, or what they've done, how marred that image is. Everybody
Mhm.
has the image of God. And so when I was in Maryland years ago, I was a minister at a church up there, and we had a little ministry where we would bring some inner city kids, down to the church because we were like 10, 15 minutes south of Baltimore. So we'd go in, we'd pick them up, we'd bring them down to the church, and we'd have them, there for youth group and stuff like that. And, the place where our church was at was kind of in the suburbs of the nice area, right? Like so
Mhm.
you get these $500,000 homes, and these kids are playing lacrosse at $20,000 private schools, sort of a deal. And I talk to those kids all the time, and would teach them these principles like, hey, listen, you have to understand, like those kids, right? They lived completely different lives than you. They're gonna have completely different understandings of the world, but your job is, you are a Christian, and your job is to show love to them, right? Like they are in the image of God as much as you are the image of God.
Mhm.
And you are not to show partiality to them because of, that they're rough around the edges, because they have a different skin color, because they don't go to a private school, because they live in the city, they don't live in the suburbs. And so, like, when that kid I told you about was blasting me, calling me a racist and calling me all, I was like, do you not remember all of these
Yeah.
lessons that I taught you? Like, I don't
Mhm.
understand. So the Bible speaks to this a lot. I think there's a lot of, if you look at the law of Moses, just in general, and how God told Israel to treat one another, I mean, just that in general was like giving respect and love to the downcast and the oppressed, So,
Yeah. And I think too, it's important to highlight that a lot of the laws were given specifically for the Israelite community. Like, how
hmm
do we treat each other? And this is where I think Krista and I really want to speak into the church, not to say, that having a voice in culture isn't important, but the way we are conditioned to treat each other in church, and why true biblical teaching is really important, is because we have to understand the guidelines by which God has set up, the parameters, the barriers for how we treat one another. Yes, I'm going to treat you a certain way because you're an image bearer. And there should be a way in which I treat you as a child of God, and the way that we interact based on the fact that we are brothers and sisters. And when we look back into the Old Testament, how God set up for the Israelite community to treat each other, we can extrapolate some of those things to see how we should be treating each other as a Christian community.